Well, welcome everybody to the last episode of Fearless Flight Live for calendar year 2023. Oh my God, that means that I'm nearing yet another year closer to however it is I'm going to hang around this planet. And welcome to all of you. Welcome to Dieter and Eric on this fine night, day after Christmas. If we have anybody watching, that should probably be a surprise, but anyway, we're here for you regardless. And if you're watching this, please leave a comment. There'll be some opportunities in here to answer some questions that we're going to throw out. And whether you're live or watching the replay, we take a look at that. So, okay. Fearless Flight Live is a weekly show that we do to help people who are afraid to fly, who knows somebody's afraid to fly, or you just want to talk about airlines, airplanes, and the industry. And tonight we have I think, a fun show. We're looking at control. Put a comment in the remarks if you have issues with control. And if you don't, we know you're lying, because that is so common for people. And we all, that's the thing about being human. We all like to believe that we can have some control over our fate. And so, we're not many places, I think Eric could agree, where you can give up so much control like you can on an airplane, starting with guys like Eric and I up in the cockpit to the mechanics and everything else. So that is why it makes perfect sense to us why you would have issues with control. And so we welcome that, and we're going to talk about it just a little bit tonight, give you some overviews on that. Our Facebook group, Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather, is open to anybody as long as you log in there at the link you can see depicted on the screen. We welcome you, as do the other members, nearly 1,500 strong now. Come on board and get your questions answered, and keep moving on down the road to becoming a fearless flyer.
Speaking of fearless flyers, Ron,
yep.
I just want to acknowledge Jim Duke, who says good evening from Trinidad and Tobago right now.
Oh, good choices. Good choice, Jim.
Yes.
One of my favorite cab drivers was from there. I can't believe it. That's funny. And I didn't even know it was a country until I rode with him in a cab one night. So anyway, okay. Tonight, whoops, it's not the crew edition, but 201, we're going to talk about the next monthly live group coaching webinar on January 18th. And I'm going to do a little thing tonight. The guys and I, we're going to talk about turbulence in the mind, this whole thing about fighting to feel in control. And I've got an update on something I mentioned 2 weeks ago. And as always, we'll take your questions. I'm really excited. I did a refresher course to upgrade my skills on EMDR. And I'm going to be talking a lot more about EMDR as a therapy. It's I have a lot of people ask me about hypnosis, and a few ask me about EMDR. And the beauty of EMDR, one of the real beauties of it, is it's kind of a hybrid. And it's the best of hypnotherapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy, all rolled up into one. So EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, is what the letters stand for. And we're going to present a student's guide to trauma therapy, because that is really relevant to 99.9% of the fearful flyers I've worked with over the years. So let's digress for just a minute. Let's talk about turbulence in the mind, fighting to feel in control. Control and your need for control really, really, really puts a damper on your ability to relax in an airplane. And most people, no matter what the surface fear is, whether it's turbulence or feeling entrapped, or any of the surface fears and triggers, they all are rooted in feeling the inability to feel control, and fear of losing control or not being in control, particularly in the context of flight anxiety, can manifest in many ways, each with unique characteristics, and they all impact you. I like to think it's one of those gifts that keeps on giving. So let's take a quick look at some of the ways that it manifests. Excessive worrying. individuals, all of you out there, you might experience relentless worrying. You know, we talk a lot in chapter 1 in the book on how to overcome fear of flying about the brain. We talk a lot about the fact that we inherited the worry gene from our ancestors. Those of our would-be ancestors that didn't make it got eaten because they weren't worried enough. So our ancestors took care of that for us, and our brains evolved to be able to analyze and assess and predict the future by virtue of paying attention to patterns in the environment. And excessive worrying often revolves around the fear of the airplane crashing or encountering turbulence. You know, or you know, even the entrapment gets what do I want to say, gets short-circuited there, because I was talking to a client today in a coaching session, and her anticipatory anxiety starts with thinking about turbulence, and then it backs up to the fact that she can't do anything. So even that fear of being trapped in there is subordinated to control. Panic attacks. I don't know where that came from. The thought of flying might trigger panic attacks, and that can, as you know, that can include symptoms like rapid heartbeat, sweaty palms, sweaty soles in your feet, trembling, and an overwhelming sense of dread. And this is, you know, one of the most feared things for many people. Again, usually ends up rooted in their fear of or anticipatory anxiety and feeling trapped in there. Because the only thing worse than having a panic attack would be having a panic attack inside an airplane where you can't get out. And we're not about to let you out 35,000 feet. Another thing that's really prevalent in control issues is avoidance behavior. This is a strategy that many of you have. You know, the people with flight anxiety might, as you all know, go to great lengths to avoid flying. So we call them either avoiders or won't flyers. And you know, they'll end up choosing alternate methods to get to their destination, or they just won't go. And it's often time consuming. The reality is if you got a job and you're trying to do something, go someplace cool on vacation, having to drive or take a train or a bus, something like that, usually doesn't work. So avoidance behavior is one of the biggies. Obsessive safety checks. This is just a form of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, or tendencies. And it's, again, people who are afflicted by this, it's underneath causes are rooted in grounded in lack of control, and it causes people to repeatedly check for safety features, you know, like the location of the exits and things like that, or more what if questions. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? Okay. Physical symptoms. You know, physical manifestations that include nausea, dizziness, headaches, or even vomiting, primarily triggered by the stress and anxiety of flying. And this was a particularly cute cartoon that I saw there. It says, a guy holding the puppet says, "I'm not either a control freak." And I think most fearful flyers pretty much get it that they have control issues, but whether they could own it as a control freak or not, I'm not sure. Hypervigilance. This is one of the many symptoms of trauma. You just constantly on guard, constantly feel like you're on the edge of the Grand Canyon and about to fall off. And you become really overly alert to every sight, sound, and sensation on the airplane. And the common interpretation is something's got to be wrong. Another one of our friends, catastrophic thinking, the ability to turn anything into a catastrophe. And it involves imagining the worst possible scenarios, like a crash or a terrorist attack, even though those events are statistically rare. Doesn't alter the catastrophic thinking, though. Just general need for control. People who have a general need for control might insist on specific seats or engage in rituals that they believe will ensure safety. You know, I got people that tell me they slap the side of the airplane before they get on. I got people that say, "I've got to be in this seat. I've got to be in this exit row." And I had a recent client lately or recently that gave up a trip to Hawaii because he didn't know. And I got more information on that. Eric and I talked about this way, but they won't let a family sit in the exit row. It's not whether they're your family or not, and that's why they moved him. And of course, he was right next to him, so that upset his apple cart, and he got off the flight. And so it has some really valid consequences in that. Okay, and I love this. It says, I need a few minutes with the auto sensor to regain my illusion of control. And that's all control is for any of us as human beings, is it's an illusion. People think you're driving down the street and completely discount the fact that at any time somebody can cross the median, come over and hit you head on. I just saw a really tragic article the other day. A fellow and his bride were driving down from Utah to Arizona here, and they were hit by a head-on driver who crossed into their lane, and it killed both of them. So, not
Ron, I don't know why, but I never would have thought of this, but when you brought this need for control thing up, it just cracked me up. Remember back in the day, us and Northwest Airlines were the launch customers for the Airbus.
Yeah.
Our guys were getting the factory flight training and all that kind of stuff, and they're sitting there in an Airbus, and they check the fire system, like you and I have done. Since on the Wright brothers check the fire system.
Yeah.
And the French guy goes, "Why are you doing that? It self-checks every 2 seconds. Do not keep checking it. You will wear it out." But can you imagine telling a pilot not to worry about checking the fire detection and suppression system?
Not even.
No.
My
second favorite movie. It's inconceivable.
Yeah.
But don't do it.
I was about to point out, which you and I know, who are the front two, which seats are reserved for the biggest control freaks on the airplane?
Yeah, right.
The two in the cockpit, right? And you may recall the Alaska air crash, very tragic crash that ended up crashing off the coast of LA. And the problem was mechanical. It's been fixed, and so it won't happen again in the future. But what was pointed out was that there was a problem with the jack screw. So in the neck, as soon as that came out as one of the preliminary findings, anybody who flew not only the MD-80, which was the kind of type of airplane they had, but any airplane which has a similar jack screw mechanism for controlling the verticals or the horizontal stabilizer, which allows you to pitch up and pitch down, pilots were going out, and we always check it once on the way out. I don't know if you remember this, Eric, but guys were overheating the hydraulic assist system because they were checking it 57 times on the way out to the runway. So we're all subject to that, and we all need control. And let's like say you want your pilot to be a controller, but not if you're one of his kids or his wife necessarily. So. Sleep disturbances, another thing that shows up in control issues is you don't get a good night's sleep. How many of you out there have told me that you can't sleep the night before a flight? And and obviously you've got something on your mind, but it's that fear of not being in control the next day when you take your flight. Another one, obviously, any dependence on medication or alcohol. We're not bad mouthing either form, but you want to do it with great wisdom and great discernment. You don't want to become dependent on that, and you don't want to get to the point where you're no longer in control of your physical faculties, because it might interfere with your boarding and being allowed to ride on the flight. And we want you sober enough so that if we have to stop and get everybody off in a hurry, that you can do that. Claustrophobia, you can see I've updated that to claustrophobia, because people used to talk about, being in a confined space in an airplane cabin exacerbates their feelings of being trapped or suffocated. And that's a very specific and often reported fear. But we've narrowed that down more thanks to a client that I had about 3 months ago who called to my attention. The exact name for that might be more well suited to call it claustrophobia, which is a fear of entrapment. And so, yeah, that's again, I got to read the cartoon here. It says, this is Cinderella. An unlocked door in this neighborhood and a warm bowl of porridge on a blustery day. It's entrapment, pure entrapment. So, okay. Control, it will drive you crazy. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So every manifestation that we've talked about and more, they can vary in intensity, and they may require different strategies to manage them, such as therapy or relaxation techniques or education about air travel or air safety. And including, you might need to look at some underlying issues with trauma. And we're going to give you, anybody who joins us on January 18th is going to get an up close and personal look at EMDR. So I hope you can make it. Okay. Eric and I were talking. We have a mutual friend who's still flying, and he came over to my house for Christmas dinner yesterday. And we were just shooting the bull, and I'm trying to get him on as a guest. He's a little bit shy. And but he made the big mistake of telling me about this new, all I know to call it is better turbulence alerting system. And Eric and I were talking a little bit about it. I think it says the program overlays FDX Pro X. So FDX Pro X must be a service, as you were saying, Eric. Go ahead, tell them a little bit what you know about this.
Yeah, and jump in because we're the blind leading the blind, but this is a brand new thing. And what Ron's talking about, FDX ProX has this app, and they are a provider. They're essentially the cloud, and they're getting inputs.
They're like HBO Max or Netflix or whatever.
Yeah. And Ron says from our buddy told him it was actually an input from the iPad. And my understanding was an input from the airplanes, because the new airplanes have so much magic. But it's actually from accelerometers in the airplane or the iPad measuring instantaneous acceleration. So if Ron and I are flying along and we go, oops, we went through this bad area, boom, 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 and the airplane reports it to this company that Ron just mentioned. And at any moment in time or any amount of time, there's a bazillion airplanes that have gone through this airspace that are reporting what we call the ride, the turbulence, how the ride was to the whoever they are, and it collects all this data. And then he showed the picture of our friend with his flight plan. Then if you're a subscriber and you pay Netflix the money, then on your iPad, your flight plan overlays, and it shows what that turbulence report was all the way along the route of your flight or anywhere else on the globe you want to look, because of the amount of the airplanes that have gone through this airspace and automatically reported it via the accelerometers, either in the airplane or on the iPad, to this service that then kicks it out to everybody.
So our friend Mark I've encouraged him. He was flying today. I tried to rope him in to come in tonight, but he was flying. So at the very least, I told him to put on his calendar to mark out the monthly live coaching session. And he's going to come on there along with the EMDR. I'm going to add this to the agenda because so many of you, are concerned about that. How do we know where to go and all that? Well, the best place is if you got an airplane in the air, and the best way to learn it is if somebody else experiences it and reports it to you. And this, at first blush, this looks like a very, very advanced system, relatively speaking, and the timeliness is what's critical. So for any of you that I've told, do not waste your time looking at turbulence.com before your flight tomorrow or the next day or whatever. Definitely don't waste your time anymore, because this is the thing that you want to do now. I don't know if they'll publicly, sell this to the general public. Probably not. But anyway, I just thought it was really cool that's the level of technology now. And because I think I'd been putting out, somebody told me that, if you do a PIREP with that, it comes through another system within 12 minutes. But this one sounds really, really cool. So you may have to forget what Eric and I have told you, and when Mark gets here, but he's flying tonight, as a matter of fact. And I told him to start doing his homework so he can come down and tell us all about that. So you can look.
One truth that Ron and I have told you repeatedly is that the pilots hate turbulence as much as you do. They're just not afraid of it. It annoys them to no end. And now there's this superior method, this superior predictor to give them this real-time feedback, a better way to quote unquote see it than they've had before.
Yeah. To me, it's really exciting, take that and some of the stability augmentation computer programs and stuff that they're putting on airplanes now. We're going to give you the best ride that you can possibly get. And it's unfortunate, but sometimes you just can't do any better than what's going on out there. Okay. Eric can weigh in on this as well. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about an article that I read that might, frankly, piss off the first class and premium passengers, in that a lot of the pilot contracts, American for sure, I think United for sure, they have in their contract now, if they're deadheading, which is when they have to ride as a passenger from one point to another to pick up their trip or commence their trip, they now are entitled to first class seats. And I didn't have the full story. I thought that was a given that they would do it, but there is a caveat, and that is, for example, if you look at your flight, say you're booked on American from Phoenix to Chicago, and you look at the number, it'll tell me how many first class seats are open yet. So let's say there's 3 seats open. And then you look down below there, typically you can find out that there's like 30 people who are hoping they got a regular price seat, and they're hoping they can use frequent flyer miles or some perk to upgrade to a better seat in first class. And so those are the people that would be affected, because if somebody purchased a ticket in first at full price, they're going to get the seat. But what they did now, the contract says, okay, if there's 30 people waiting in line to upgrade to some X number of first class seats, if there is a pilot that's deadheading, he gets to the top of the list, and so he'll get the first opportunity to grab that seat. And clarify that. I can't think of anything else. I did want to highlight again the EMDR session coming up on the 18th of January. Please join our monthly coaching. I think it's the best bargain out there. It certainly is the best thing for the average fearful flyer. You typically are not going to get over this in a month or so. And the best thing you can do, it's a process. The best thing you do is stay engaged and connected to us and other fearful flyers. I think that's the best way to go. So let's take a moment for questions here. We'll have Dieter check back in with us if we got any comments or that. Otherwise, we'll call it a day and wait for the new year.
Yeah, and you know what? The way 2023 seems to have flown by. It'll be here before we know it. We had a couple of interesting stories about the superstition and what's meaningful and how we create like these little rituals to create comfort and safety. And so Sandra shared her story with a lucky rabbit's foot.
Oh yeah, good old Sandra. Yeah.
Yes. So, but no, there's no direct questions or anything like that.
Well, that's good, because I've had enough of me. So hopefully you've had enough of me, and we appreciate you for sharing your time with us this whole year. And we hope it's been of some benefit to you, and you'll keep coming back. We really value your feedback. If there is anything that you want to talk about, it's always better coming from you than us having to guess. So with that, we want to say we hope you all get to where you can fly fearlessly. And from Dieter and Eric and I and Diane by proxy, we want to wish you a happy new year, and we'll see you back again next week on the next episode of Fearless Flight Live. Have a great week, everybody.
See you next year.